Do you know the federal government has set aside $160 million to check the news that you're getting? Just to make it their news that you're getting. It's next.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
All while ferreting out the bottom line.
On all topics, controversial, bizarre, and taboo. Interviewing movers and shakers, agitators and muckrakers.
But that doesn't answer my question. That is all I'm answering.
With me, Gary Harrison, as your guide.
Harrison with you, live streaming and live FM broadcasting up and down the west coast of California, east coast of the United States, and here and there on various affiliates. Did you know that the federal government has created, let's just call it an Orwellian orgasm? It has finally happened in the Aldous Huxley beauty that it could only be if you combine Secretary of Defense, Director of National Intelligence, and other federal agencies to create a global engagement center. And we're not talking about gay marriage here. Nope. We're talking about leading, synchronizing, coordinating efforts of the federal government to recognize, understand, expose, and counter foreign, state, and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts aimed at undermining United States and national security interests, whatever that could mean. It's an alert, a call to action here, and I want to introduce to you Rick Sterling. He's a retired electronics engineer who worked, now it does sound like a dating game, doesn't it? Retired electronics engineer who worked 25 years in the space science and electronics industry, now works as an investigative journalist. He has done research and writing related to the corporatization of public education and writing related to the corporatization of the war of aggression against Syria, other topics. He grew up in Vancouver, now lives in San Francisco, currently active with the Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center, Task Force on the Americas and Syria Solidarity Movement. And Rick, I want to welcome you to Go Harrison.
Yeah, great to be here.
And we're talking now for real about finally getting all the government's arms and legs, hair and teeth, pudenda, to interrelate, to coordinate, to figure out what their version of propaganda is, or perhaps to declare real news as propaganda if it doesn't fit the new government's narrative.
Yeah, it seems very much like that is the case. They're not content with dominating and controlling the mainstream media and so much of the narrative around Syria or Russia or any other international issues. They want to totally dominate it, and they want to basically undermine and what they call counter any competing narrative.
And we saw Rick Sterling back in the Bush administration when it was the Patriot Act or other national defense authorization acts, even the one that Bill Clinton signed in 1997 that allowed the school system to receive tanks and landmines like they do here in Los Angeles. Landmines and minesweepers, by the way. We have seen some of the tanks. They're very, very sexy indeed. Pardon the sarcasm. I just can't help it because it's real. When I read 1984, which was written in 1948, it was about an impossible future, and it was grim and scary, and now we do, in fact, have iPhones and cell phones and GPS monitoring, and the laws have changed through the NDAA, which is basically the Pentagon's legal pad here, where they can reframe just the information you and I might want to put in the newspaper.
Right. Now, this was it began as a bill in Congress in March. They called it Countering Foreign Information and Propaganda, or Foreign Disinformation and Propaganda. And then it was basically rushed through the House and the Senate in early December, and President Obama signed it on December 23 when nobody was paying attention. It's buried deep in the National Defense Authorization Act, and it basically mandates $160 million to start with. They want to have this global engagement center up and running in 180 days, and they're throwing in a $20 million slush fund that will be provide funding to NGOs and private contractors who can assist them in countering what they deemed to be disinformation and propaganda.
I remember, and it was when Swingin' Dick Cheney was at the helm and George Bush and the rest, if I remember, it was Negroponte came up with TIA, Total Information Awareness.
Yes.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah, I do. And I think they changed the name and they kind of put it through anyway. And this is very much along those lines. And just like you're saying, it is Orwellian. War is peace. Peace is war. And of course, what's dangerous here is that we don't have an objective evaluator of what is propaganda. It's sad to say our government has a very solid track record of basically misinforming the public when they want to do something and they want to win public acceptance. Of course, one of the big examples is the weapons of mass destruction, which never existed, or they did not exist in Iraq, but that was the justification for the war, which to this point, the tally is still running, but it's at $1.7 trillion that operation cost.
And the interest on that alone is enough to buy at least 300 fleets of yachts for all of us that actually care. We're talking right now to Rick Sterling. Rick is a retired electronics engineer, worked 25 years in the space science and electronics industries, now works as an investigative journalist. You can catch his stuff. Just Google his name and up will come many, many stories of the kinds of investigations. This happens to be one that hits the pulse of pretty much every single American. Left, right, libertarian, it doesn't really matter. Nobody likes the notion of Big Brother watching them, especially now being able to officially change the story that's being told. Interestingly enough, Rick, I was talking to a German named Jan Tüssing just a while ago about his sense as a German looking at Donald Trump's playbook of how he was, campaigning and the tone of the conversation, what some people consider racism. I'm sitting next to a person from another culture over here. I think he thinks that probably it's racist. I'm a gringo, so I think it's also, to me, it seems racist. And the German guy was saying that I have no idea now. My train of thought is totally derailed, Rick, right all over the tracks. So let's go back to you, shall we, so that we can make sense of the senselessness of this. We're talking about the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, which President Obama signed in the wee hours that now allows various government arms even more than ever, bigger, bolder, brighter, and in greater technicolor, not only to observe and monitor, but now to probably remove, to spike stories, to deselect them from the public narrative if they decide, like the Patriot Act, they decide that it's not in the interest of the federal government.
The U.S. media is crying crocodile tears for armed opposition for terrorists who are directly connected to or are actually part of Al-Qaeda in Syria. So about al-Nusra.
We're out of time here. However, we can't stop right this second because it's very important. So the U.S. government is aligned with Al-Qaeda. What's the payoff?
Basically, there's a complex reasons. It's geopolitical, it's geostrategic. Hillary Clinton issued demands to Bashar al-Assad in 2010, and Assad said, "Well, we're an independent government; we make our own policy," and it kind of went from there. But the key thing is that the key thing is to support international law. I mean, we're wasting a ton of money here as U.S. taxpayers, overthrowing governments and countries left and right, resulting in the death, mayhem, and destruction. Look at Libya. When was the last time you heard Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama apologize for the overthrow of the government there, which is now in complete chaos? They used to have the highest standard of living in northern Africa, and now it's a mess. Yes. And they apparently want to do. They have not apologized. They have not poured money into stabilizing the situation. No, so you've had an explosion of terrorism in Libya, and the same thing has gone on in Syria. I've got a photograph of a truck that's got mounted with heavy-duty weaponry in the back of the pickup truck, and you look carefully at the photograph, and the truck has California license plate.
Rick Sterling. Did I say Rick Sterling? Yes, I said Rick Sterling. When in doubt, Google it out. Thank you so much, my friend.